we're going to take a look at creating a new request in Foxfire 8.0. In the Request Manager, we click on the New button, which brings up the new type of new request. Now we can choose different types of requests, such as a detail, summary, crosstab, or labels. You can also choose a different style. Now once you choose a style, you can always change it later on in your report. When you choose a type of a request, this actually will define what the request is going to be and how the screen is that you're going to be interacting with. Let's click on New Presentation for a detailed report. And we are immediately put into the presenter. Now, in the design area, what you basically have are two windows. You have a workbench, which is this little window that I'm moving around on the screen right now. You also have the preview area, which appears up in the upper left-hand corner. Now, all of the items in here are live. So, as I start working with this, if I start giving this a name, and I move off of it, it actually is filling in the type of request of what we're working in here. I provided a new report, so I'm going to say listing of cars in inventory, and you'll notice that it immediately changes immediately in the area that I'm working in. I come over and select data items, which is the first step in actually creating a report. I need to choose the columns of information that are going to appear on my screen. Notice that when I move over the tab, it actually highlights the area in the report, in this case data items, as to where I'm going to see the content. So I come down and I can choose the items that I want to work with. So if I wanted to move over cars make, I can choose to actually click on it and choose add, and it moves it over. I can also choose to actually highlight a couple of columns that I want, select multiple ones, and just drag them over, and they'll immediately move over. Or, if I prefer, I can now actually take an item such as cars, days, and inventory and just drag it directly into this preview area where it immediately adds it to the report. Once it's been added to the report, I can actually choose to move it around. I can actually just click. I click and drag, move it over further over onto the side. It reorders it. It also reorders it down below here. So I have full access to the information I'm going to pull in. Now one other quick point to bring up in the Select Data Items area. See where it says All Data Groups? I can selectively group my data to be more useful for when I have a lot of items to be found. In this example, I have about 500 different data items that can be chosen from, so it might be kind of hard to find all of the details. So in this case, I'm just going to pull this down and say I want to look for salesman information, and now I see all of the entries in the salesman. I'm just going to click and move over salesman name. Salesman name has now been added to my report, and it's combined it over, and I can actually see my report taking shape as I build it. One kind of handy thing here in the workbench is if I need to see a little bit more of the screen, I can just roll it up, and I can notice down here automatic totals that are coming in, one for mileage and one for days in inventory. If I prefer, I can also dock the workbench and actually place it directly on the screen. So if I prefer to work in one window, I can always do that. In this case, we're going to undock it so we can move with it this way. And we're going to switch over to the Sort and Group tab. Now in this report, I actually want to get a listing of all of the cars that are in inventory grouped by salesperson. So I'm actually just going to click over onto salesman name. And I can add it to the other list if I want to. What I can also do is right mouse click and choose Group by this item. When I choose that, it immediately has regrouped my report. Salesman name is now showing up under here with a group footer. It's been hidden or removed. If I click back over to the Select Data Items, it's actually been hidden from the other area of where I'm looking at. So I actually am seeing more details as to what's going on in my report. I can also now come over into I can do a couple of things in this area. Since it's grouping by this, I can now say, well, I also want to sort it by cars make. And notice that as I'm doing this, you'll see the sort orders. It's telling me that it's going to be sorting by car salesman name and then by cars make. Also down here, I'm seeing the group header for salesman name and then another group sort order for that item. Within each item in the preview, I can actually have a live interactive working with this. So I can actually right mouse click, and I can choose options like Start New Page, Reset Page Number, or if I'm not sure, I can choose Group Options, or simply double click on the item and get a listing of the options that I have available to me. So I can choose, for example, I'm showing a group header. I can actually choose to show a group label, draw a line below footer, and so forth. Various items that you might choose to put onto this report. If I click over to Summary Calculations, I can also see that automatically I'm always going to see the sum of average days in inventory and then the average of cars mileage. So I'm seeing detailed information automatically displayed in my report. I can also, though, choose to add additional summaries. So maybe in this case it would be useful to have another piece of information maybe telling me how many cars I have for each of these salespeople. So I'm going to choose Add, pull this list down, choose Count of Items, and have it added in. Now in my preview, I can actually see, here's my make, my model, here are my subtotals for days in inventory, but also here's the count of items. So I'm building this report dynamically, and as I'm building it, it's actually refreshing in both the preview and in this little in the actual workbench of what I'm working with. So I always have choices as to where I'm going to pull out the information. Now let's switch over to filters. Filters define what type of information you are actually looking at. So in this case, we want to look at the cars that are in inventory. I'm going to double click to add the filter. I'm going to choose an item down here, and basically if something's been sold, that means the date of sale is going to be empty. That means it's still sitting there. So I just come down here and choose empty. I'm going to save this entry. And it tells me the filters up here on the screen. It shows me all of the details as I'm working down with the items, but it actually is telling me this information as I'm working. I can also, of course, choose to say maybe I'm only looking at one particular car. So I can add a new filter, cars make is like, and in this case, I don't really know what the value is going to be, so I'm actually just going to leave this and check the option to ask at runtime. What this will allow me now to do is this will ensure that when I'm running my report, I will be prompted for this information, and I can choose to add it or not. Let's take a quick look at the output to see how we've actually built this this report. If I click on Run, I'm now getting prompted, cars make is like. In this case, I have a little drop down and I can actually choose the cars make that I want. So if I'm interested in Fords, I click on OK, it generates my report for me, and now I can see the details in the output layout, and it looks very similar to what it did in the preview. Here I see Joseph Collins, I see all of the items that are down here, and I can see the full detail of the information of what I'm looking for. In this area, I can now choose if I want to send it to a printer, to a PDF, Excel, any of the details that I need to, or I can just come back to the main editor and make additional changes that I need to make. With this one tool, it's very easy to make all of the individual changes, and notice the other quick point here. As soon as I run my request, it's immediately saved. This is valuable because this means you have one repository for all of your reports as they get created, and as you start working with them, you don't always have to remember to hit save. As soon as you run it, it automatically gets hit. The save automatically happens. So, let's quickly review what we just did. We basically just built a very quick report that showed a lot of detailed information in here. We're showing the car's make, model, and detailed information. We added some additional calculations to it, such as the count. And as you notice as I'm moving over these items, they are all interactive. So I can actually move things around if I need to. I just click, drag them around. I'm moving them around on both the report and in the layout so I can immediately see the changes. I can also choose to double click on individual items and get options that are available to me. Another handy feature in here is that as you start working in the data item editor and start working in the various parts of the screen, if you double click on areas, it moves the area that you're working in. So if you're not sure, for example, where you need to actually make changes to deal with the sort and group option, when I just double click on sort and group, it moves over the workbench directly to that tab. So I'm always able to see what areas I want to work with. Double click on cars inventory, the title, it takes me right over the title. So it's an interactive way of building my report, and it continually changes as I move forward. In the next set of examples, we'll be going through some of the more advanced options that you can find when building a report.